My dad, Larry Linton, the only true servant leader willing to stand in the arena and fight for your freedoms.
Larry is a man of God, and he will move heaven and earth to protect the people in district.
Too many elected politicians act like chameleons.
My name is Mike. I'm Larry's neighbor. I bought the house behind him. I trust Larry to give me an honest answer.
And what's important to me is faith, family, and my freedom. And I believe these values are also held by Larry Linton.
More important than ever, I believe, in our lifetime to really stand up and fight for what's right. And Larry's doing that, and I'm supportive of it.
We need to replace career politicians in Nashville with leaders willing to stand for what is right, even if it's not popular. People who feel a calling and are not looking to make a profession out of it.
You're not going to find a more honest, straightforward, and passionate individual, I don't believe. Larry is what you see is what you get. He's honest.
Listen, if you are looking for a true conservative who's passionate about the state of Tennessee, the people that live in it, and wanting to make a difference in a meaningful way, Larry's your guy.
Welcome to the season 4 finale, ladies and gentlemen. It's hard to believe that I've been doing this podcast for nearly 4 full years now. I'm sure you heard the saying that if you do something you love, you will never work a day in your life. Well, I really enjoy putting these episodes together and don't think of it as work. Of course, there are times when my work schedule gets too busy to put together an episode and I'll take a break from it. That is because this show doesn't put food on the table, if you know what I mean. I don't earn any money from this podcast. I do it because it is fun, as well as it gets people to think about what our government, all levels of government, has devolved into since our nation's founding. Hopefully, the show has provided some insight into what to look out for whenever our elected officials do something or propose legislation that they will often tout that will be beneficial for the people. We have been witnesses to that on the national level for this entire past week with the battles over keeping the government funded and quote unquote open with yet another continuing resolution. Thankfully, the original iteration of that funding bill, which was just thousands of pages of pet projects meant to keep the deep state supply of our sweat equity available, despite the results of the past election. What I hope each of you has noticed this last week was that the addiction to our tax dollars is not isolated to just one political party, but it is an addiction that nearly every elected official in Congress suffers from. Well, they don't really suffer. Their addiction, though, it does inflict suffering on the taxpayers of this country, not to themselves. They are too afraid to put themselves through withdrawal, so they attempted to double down on their suckling at the teat of the American people. Besides the many absurd projects funded in the original continuing resolution, nothing was worse than the Congress attempting to raise their salaries. Mind you, their positions are all voluntary. They chose to run for office knowing what their salary would be. But they attempted to raise their salaries by an amount that was equal to the average American's yearly wages. It is sickening what they attempted to do, and do it with a Republican Speaker of the House. They did it with Mike Johnson's support. Anyway, we'll touch on that a bit in this week's lesson on government action. A couple of things, though, before we kick off the show. The first being that I want to wish my beautiful bride a happy anniversary today. Today marks 29 years of wedded bliss completed for my bride and I. And no, I don't get to combine Christmas and anniversary gifts, so don't think I get off easy with having those two dates so close together. There are a few reasons why we chose to get married so close to Christmas. Chief among them was that we were poor, and we figured that we would not have to pay a florist to decorate the church we were married in because it would be already decorated for the Christmas season. My deployment schedule played a large part in our wedding date as well. Denise was living in Florida, where we originally met and started dating, where I was stationed at Cape Canaveral before I moved in April of the same year that we were married, and was stationed on a submarine in Pearl Harbor. We only had a short window in my deployment schedule that allowed me to travel back to Florida and get married and then move everybody back to Hawaii. That was the start of our wedded adventure, and moving her all over the country. Since our next anniversary will be our 30th, we have a great adventure planned for that and involves going out to sea again. I'll fill the audience in on what that will be as we get closer to our departure date later in 2025. The next thing I would like to ask is that my audience lift my oldest and dearest friend Dave up in your prayers. He's going through some health challenges right now. In fact, he should be getting some answers from post-surgery testing later today. I met Dave shortly after my family and I moved to Cicero, New York back in 1982. We have been through a lot together. In fact, when I think back to our many adventures as teenagers, I'm surprised we survived. So, please pray for some good test results today. For now, though, let's get on with this week's show, which will be a two-part season finale, and take a stand in the arena together as we dive into a lesson on what certain government actions really mean to our freedom. Welcome to the Liberty, Leadership, and Lies podcast. On this show, we will discuss the assaults on our liberty by the very institution we the people created to secure our liberty. We will also compare and contrast the actions of people in leadership positions to the servant leadership that is needed to protect our God-given, constitutionally protected rights. Additionally, we will break down the many lies that elected and unelected officials in government and media spin every day in order to secure for themselves positions of power and influence that are antithetical to the system of government our founding fathers created and passed down to us. Here we go, folks. Part one of the two-part season 4 finale. Before I sign off for a couple of weeks as I get settled into the new flow of my work and family schedule. Season 5 of the Liberty, Leadership, and Lies podcast will return to all platforms, except maybe YouTube after this episode, which will probably result in another strike against me, as you can see from this latest screenshot of an email they sent me this past week. Yep, I received that email last Thursday. Did you notice what the episode it is referring to, though? I received a strike on my YouTube account on the 19th of December, 2024, for an episode that was released on the 6th of October, 2021. The industrial censorship complex is alive and well, folks, and it will go through the history of each and every one of our social media posts to silence any message that contradicts the government-approved narrative. Back to the show schedule, though. The podcast will return to its normal schedule on the 13th of January. At that time, I should be wrapping up my team visits in the Montana and North Dakota area and be making my way down to Gillette, Wyoming for a few days. I'm also working on the rescheduling of my knee surgery with a VA and a different orthopedic specialist in Morristown. As it stands right now, barring any further complications in the scheduling, I should get the knee surgery done during the first week of March. There should not be much downtime associated with the recovery, just some limitations on certain movements and types of physical activity. That means the show will go on, folks. As I close out the season 4 of the show, I want to do so with another lesson about just how much our government hates us and just how little they think of the constituents they are supposed to serve. I'm going to reach back to last week's show for a bit here and show a clip that perfectly captures how we are in the situation we are with the people that serve in elected office. And not just on the national level, but at the state and local levels as well. When I asked State Representative Monty Fritz why he thought our state legislature, Tennessee, has worked so hard at not protecting the most fundamental of civil rights that we possess as human beings, his answer was succinct and should serve as a warning to every voter, not just in our state, but throughout our republic. Give it a listen. It's just a quick 17 or so seconds. Here it is.
One of the next things we ought to be afraid of is putting weak men in a position of responsibility, because weak men make timid decisions, and timid decisions will reinforce the things that make them feel secure at the risk of everybody else's rights. And we've done that.
Yep, the apathy of the voter has led to weak individuals being elected to public office for generations now. Thus, we end up with people in office that do not serve their constituents, but rather do everything possible to serve their own self-interests. That's what weak people do. As I mentioned in the show's introduction, we are witnessing what happens in the halls of Congress when it is filled with these weak people. What is another way we, as the voters, can recognize when weak people are serving their own self-interests and not the interests or well-being of the people they were elected to represent? Of course, one of the ways has been discussed on this show many times. That is when any level of government introduces an ordinance, regulation, or law that they euphemistically call an investment. We could go on and on about the numerous pieces of legislation that have been sold to the people as an investment, which really just resulted in the erosion of our liberty. Some of them have been short-term, quote-unquote, investments that are passed by the politicians that are nothing more than paybacks to donors for their support during election or re-election campaigns, and others that are more long-term, that are really consolidations of government power and control. For example, Social Security. This government boondoggle was signed into law by the less hero, FDR, back in 1935. Now, this is a pyramid scheme, and it was the initial setup for the nanny state where the government creates a dependency on itself. It consolidated the government's power and control, and even today serves as a political weapon between the two major parties. You see, Social Security established a guaranteed retirement income. At least at the outset it did. Now it is so much more, but has the same result: dependency on government. Each party tries to get votes based upon accusing the other party of taking away people's retirement or disability or a myriad of other government guaranteed incomes. Social Security caused people to not save up or plan for their own retirements because Big Daddy government will now do that for them. Generational dependency. Whereas if an individual put the same amount of money that we pay into Social Security into a retirement or savings account, and yes, even in the stock market, they would have a much larger return on investment. The only upside to Social Security, and which serves as the biggest hook, was that it was guaranteed. The problem is, as the population of this country grows and ages, there are more people drawing from Social Security than are paying into it. It will be insolvent at some point in the future. That is a guarantee that the government does not want the population to pay attention to, though. I digress, but I think you all get my point about government investments. Both short-term and long-term only truly benefit the government, not the people. Denise and I have been talking about Social Security a lot lately because the time is approaching where we will have to make the decision to take it at the earliest opportunity or wait until we are eligible for full benefits. But here's the hook. We did plan and save for our retirements without factoring in Social Security benefits because we saw the writing on the wall. However, that does not mean that we are going to give up the money that was taken from us through force during our working years and allow the government to continue to wastefully spend it. We can wastefully spend it much better than the government and see those benefits ourselves. That brings to mind a saying that a lot of people throw around about government spending that I kind of take issue with. People are always saying that Congress spends money like a drunken sailor. That is far from the truth, ladies and gentlemen. Do you want to know how I know that? Well, many years ago, I was a drunken sailor. Do you want to know the difference between Congress and a drunken sailor when it comes to money, though? Well, I did not spend any money when I ran out of it. Congress, on the other hand, just continues to borrow from generations to come and spends it today. Drunken sailors, when they run out of money, they go home and they go to sleep. Then get up the next day to earn the money they are about to go spend again. There's another term that I want the audience to be aware of, though, when it comes to government action. Whenever the politicians start using this word, you know bad things are about to happen. Especially bad things are going to happen to our freedom, to our liberty. So what are some of the lessons we've learned about government action over the course of the past few years, especially going back to 2020 up until now? Well, we've learned that our government, local, state, and national, will use emergencies to rob the people of their freedom. The scandemic revealed that quite plainly. The government gave itself the power to shut down churches, determine who is or is not an essential worker, tell us even if we could leave our houses. We also learned that when leftists are in control, the term my body, my choice only refers to their insatiable desire to murder unborn children and does not refer to forcing millions of Americans to inject themselves with an experimental drug that did not do as promised, but did deliver adverse effects. We have also seen that the latest budget fights have revealed that both major political parties are perfectly happy to flip the American people the bird as it relates to government spending and put us further into debt. Because we have learned the lessons concerning government investments, emergency powers, my body, my choice, and are now relearning the lesson of taxation without representation, we do have to add another term as it relates to government action, and that is the word incentives. I'll go over that term on the other side of this break and how it relates to what is happening in Tennessee right now. So stick with me. Okay, folks, as I stated before the break, the term you need to pay attention to when elected officials start using it is this: incentives. You know, this episode has really grown from just what was going to be a blog post I was going to make to this two-part episode. I kept hearing this word lately, incentives, as it relates to government action, and it got me to thinking about when the last time government officials started throwing it out there in recent memory, really recent memory. And of course, it goes back to the scamdemic, right to the beginning. When the people started questioning the experimental emergency use authorization drug that all levels of our government were trying to force us to accept, and they were still getting resistance, along came some quote unquote incentives. Our government started offering incentives to inject ourselves with some heart damaging medication. Some of those incentives, or let's call them what they really are, when somebody's trying to get another person to behave or act in a manner that they really wouldn't do normally, and that is a bribe. Anyway, some of these bribes should have indicated just how little the government thinks about us as individuals. Now, this segment will have a bunch of short video clips to prove my point and to show you that you don't have to take my word for it. Just listen and watch them. Take this bribe, for instance, in two video clips back to back.
Monday, anyone with vaccination proof can get not one, but 2 free donuts from Krispy Kreme every day until September 5th. This promotion comes following the U.S. Food and Drug Administration's full approval of the Pfizer vaccine. Back in March, the chain began its promotion to encourage people to get vaccinated with a free donut a day for the rest of the year. Krispy Kreme says it has given away more than 2.5 million donuts through the deal.
Lauren, right now in North Carolina, this is the main freebie for getting your vaccine: a hot and ready glazed Krispy Kreme donut.
Yep, in North Carolina, the communist governor there, Governor Cooper, was supporting his constituents being bribed with a non-nutritious food to accepting something else unhealthy. That same news report goes on to list what some other states were offering as bribes to get the citizens to inject themselves with some myocarditis.
Now, Tarrant County in Texas is considering flat out paying people $50. Detroit is giving $50 prepaid debit cards if you drive someone to get your shot. And West Virginia will give $100 saving bonds to people 16 to 35 who get the vaccine. Their governor explains why the state decided to do the giveaways.
This is not a silver bullet, but it can absolutely be the tool that gets us across the finish line.
That newscast continues with some accidental journalism, but still using the word incentives instead of what they really are, bribes.
Today, Governor Cooper's office told me he is exploring what type of incentives are most effective and if that's another strategy to put in place to get people to get the vaccine.
Yep, the people that serve in our government and in many of our national and local media stations think so little of the American people that they believe they can get away with bribing us with donuts. So we would comply with an unconstitutional mandate of injecting ourselves with what is now proven to be an ineffectual, quote unquote, vaccine. But the bribes were not limited to donuts. Oh no. In New York City, another unhealthy food choice was provided as a bribe. Yep, let's watch old Warren Wilhelm in a couple of clips. In this first clip, he uses the word we need to watch out for when it passes the lips of any government official. Listen for it.
We need everyone to get vaccinated. So we know we have to make it convenient. We know we have to make it easy. We know we need opportunities for people to speak to their trusted community voices, doctors, et cetera. We're doing all that. But we also know that incentives help. They really do. And so we've been announcing free tickets, gift cards, all sorts of incentives to encourage people. A lot of people are ready to get vaccinated. They just haven't gotten around to it. They need a little extra incentive. We're doing that now.
Most of you may remember the guy in the clip as Bill de Blasio, but his actual name was Warren Wilhelm. I don't know why he changed his name. I think that was explored by other people, and I don't want to spend too much time on it, but knowing commies, it may be something as simple as him not wanting to have a name that sounded like a German emperor's name. Anyway, here's the quote-unquote incentive that the commie, former mayor of New York City, is advertising.
When you get your vaccine over this next few days, we're going to get you with a free Shackburger card every time you get your vaccine.
Isn't that special, folks? Donuts, hamburgers, and French fries. The healthiest of diets to go along with their shots of myocarditis. Now here is Warren himself enjoying the bribe on the video.
Free fries when you get vaccinated? I got vaccinated. If this is appealing to you, just think of this when you think of vaccination. Vaccination.
That is how highly the commies think of the people they are supposed to represent in government. Let them eat cake, right? Let's move on to one of the biggest commies in elected office right now and see what type of incentives, bribes, he was offering for his constituents to willingly give up their bodily autonomy. Watch this. I want you to pay attention to another term in this that this commie slips into his announcement of bribes. Here it is.
The state of California today is announcing the most significant incentive program in the United States of America. We're putting aside more resources than any other state in America, and we're making available the largest prizes of any state in America for those that seek to get vaccinated. Today, we're announcing that we are setting aside incentive cards, 2 million incentive cards on a first-come, first-served basis for individuals that are eligible to get a vaccine that seek to get a vaccine. That's effective today in the state of California. If you're 12 years or older, you can receive a $50 incentive card from Kroger's, Albertsons, or if you choose, just a traditional MasterCard $50 card that will allow you to utilize those dollars anywhere. If you're a family of 4, you do the math. If you're a family of 6, do the math.
Did you catch the word he used right at the outside? Yep, prizes. Government offering prizes for its citizens to exchange their freedom for. Now, what exactly does that have to do with what's going on in Tennessee right now, you may be asking? After all, isn't Tennessee one of those bright red states? Don't we have a Republican trifecta right now? A Republican governor and a supermajority of Republicans in the House and the Senate? Well, in name only, folks. Name only. Something I have been telling you all for a few years now. As I have posted about on my social media pages for the past few weeks, we have a huge debate going on in Tennessee about school choice. It's a terrible deception being pulled on the people of Tennessee, and it's something we touched on during the conversation I had with Monty Fritz during the last 2 episodes. When our government is telling us it is providing the parents in this state a choice in Tennessee between failing government schools and education freedom, they are lying to us. And in order for them to effectuate this lie, they need to offer certain groups incentives or bribes so they can get their lie across the finish line. And if that happens here in Tennessee, the people that are accepting these bribes are really just trading in their freedom to get those bribes. In some cases, it will be local governments that will accept the bribes for their support while trading in their constituents' liberty. First and foremost, we must dispel the lie that right now parents in Tennessee do not have a choice in how their children are educated. There is no law or regulation that is preventing a parent right now in Tennessee from pulling their child out of a failing government school and putting them in a private school or to start homeschooling them. Absolutely nothing in the code is preventing that. There is a barrier or an obstacle that does stop parents from doing that, and that would be the parents having the financial means to take that action. After all, private school costs a lot of money, and the government schools have zero perceived costs. It's hard to compete against a government monopoly, isn't it? So the actual main barrier to parents having a quote-unquote choice is government's monopoly on free education, which isn't really free, as there is both a cost in the taxes we pay as well as in the opportunity cost with a poor quality education. And because taxes support the government education system here in Tennessee, it does not matter if you have children in government schools or not. You all, or we all, pay those taxes. All Tennesseans provide the funding for public education. While Governor Lee, Senator Jack Johnson, and Representative William Lamberth, elected people who are crisscrossing the state trying to sell this right now, it has nothing to do with government providing a quote-unquote choice for parents that they did not have before, nor has it anything to do with education freedom. What they are selling is government overreach into the private education system and into the homeschooling network. They are doing this through lies such as naming their piece of legislation the quote-unquote Education Freedom Act of 2025. And since it is not being offered to every parent in the state, there's not any equal application of this law, meaning it might be unconstitutional under the federal Constitution. A little known fact about the initial outlay proposed in Trans-Publican Bill Lee's legislation is this. The Education Freedom Act of 2025 in Tennessee plans to allocate funds for only 20,000 scholarships in the 2024-2025 school year. That is 20,000 bribes available for a bit over 1 million students. And each quote-unquote bribe or scholarship will provide roughly $7,000 per student to attend private or homeschools. This initiative will allow parents to apply for freedom from government schools so their children can use these scholarships for various educational expenses, including tuition, textbooks, tutoring, and more. The total amount set aside for that purpose would be approximately $140 million. But there are other factors in the bill that are not counted against the initial cost, and those are the incentives or bribes for teachers and county commissions across the entire state that are embedded in this bill. Now I'm going to end part one of the finale right here and pick up part two in a separate episode. Both will be released today, though, with part two coming later this morning. Yep, a two-part same-day season finale because people really need to understand that whenever an elected official starts using the word incentives, it is code for offering the citizen a bribe in exchange for their freedom. So stick with me because I'll be right back. Well, folks, I want to close out part one of the season finale, and part two is coming in about an hour. But what a great year it has been. There have been some highs and lows, but through it all, I have learned that I need to trust in God's plan for my life. Denise and I have some great plans for 2025, and we are both looking forward to it. Mind you, I'm not looking forward to the cold temperatures I will be enduring in a couple of weeks as I'm making my way across Wyoming, Montana, North Dakota. But our 30th anniversary celebration will be awesome, as well as we will be making a return trip to Greece with some members of our church in the fall of next year. But in closing part one, here is some wisdom from God's word, and it comes to us from the book of Proverbs, chapter 4, verse 24. Put away from you a deceitful mouth and put perverse lips far from you. Whenever Tennessee's political class or their donors and political action committees tell the people that we do not have the freedom to make a choice, especially as to a choice where our children are education, they are being deceitful. Their perverse lips are lying to you so that they can put forth legislation that ends up, in one way or another, robbing us of our liberty. So part 2 of the finale will be released shortly, and in it we will continue to expose the lies that Governor Lee and the rest of his school stamps scheme cabal are pushing on the people of Tennessee. So let's continue to take a stand in the arena together, folks. Reveille, it's time to wake up.